you agree that that particular belief, because I've heard you say it was a big one for you,
Yes.
feel that you were handcuffed by that belief and then
Well,
discovered it to be completely false?
I would say so because the week I discovered it was false, I picked up 3 new jobs.
It actually was quite mind-blowing.
Was
I was pretty
because
gobsmacked. Welcome to the Your Money Habit podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having real conversations that unlock the hidden beliefs keeping you stuck, causing stress, and holding you back financially. Beliefs that might not even be true. Most of us have learnt to keep these thoughts buried, not realizing that so many other people are silently struggling with the same fears and doubts. In this podcast, we're going to uncover those beliefs and shine a light on the mindset shifts that lead to true freedom and peace around money. So let's dive in and start changing the way that you feel about your finances. So let me start by saying what prompted me to have these conversations. So the other week I was watching this interview with James Packer, who, if you don't know, happens to be one of Australia's richest people. And he is also the son of Kerry Packer, who has passed away, but he was also one of Australia's richest people. And what really struck me was that when he talked about being worried about going bankrupt, which he followed with not bankrupt with the house, but with nothing left. So at first, I was really, really shocked, given that he is actually a billionaire. I didn't know what to think. So, I was just like a billionaire worrying about losing it all. Then I thought I really appreciated him being so honest. He was also so honest about his mental health challenges, his other business failures, and just some of the other things that were going on with him, including that he was not in the best physical health. Um, but then once I got over the bit of the shock of that, I thought, okay, so what would happen if more of us were being open and honest about fears in this area? Would that help to release the anxiety and stress that it has over us? And so I wanted to have these conversations so that that we may be able to find some freedom, because we have been taught, I think, throughout the generations that this is a taboo topic and it's not something that we should talk about. And if you really think about that, that means that we're not sharing this information, and it kind of keeps us trapped in this cycle. So I want to kick it off by welcoming Lindsay to our episode today. Lindsay is both a registered nurse and she has nursed in multiple countries. And she's also the owner of a small business called The Caring Way that beautifully helps people with disabilities. So welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, Amira. It's great to be here.
I'm really excited for this conversation, actually, because, I do feel that it can be quite a freeing conversation.
Well, it is a big thing for me to have conversations like this because in I grew up Presbyterian in the west coast of Scotland, and we most definitely did not talk about money.
No, it's definitely been a taboo topic for a long time. I mean, I don't even know how long it's been a taboo topic. I mean, even if you look back hundreds of years ago, this was still something that, people weren't supposed to talk about. You had the boy or girl from the wrong side of the tracks, which we'll discuss in another episode. Um, and, and then the so-called good people who had some cash, which when you really start thinking about that, doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? So, if you don't mind me asking, can we start by asking you what made you decide to become a nurse?
Well, I decided to become a nurse because my friend worked in a nursing home with the oldies, and there was a job going, and I started working there, and I absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm.
That summer, I got really bad food poisoning, ended up in hospital being cared for by some beautiful nurses. And from then on in, it was kind of set in my head that was what I was going to do.
Okay. Well, so what prompted you then to go to different countries besides, I mean, because you did your training in Scotland, right?
I did my training in Scotland. I had always wanted to travel, and one of the, I suppose, more socially acceptable ways for women, particularly working class women, to travel was if they went abroad and worked as a nurse.
Uh-huh. And would you say that any of your beliefs around money affected your career choice?
Well, I don't know if it was my beliefs or if it was everyone else's beliefs around me, because in my high school, the majority of girls that went to the feeder primary schools that were, poorer, shall we say, we went on to become nurses and teachers, whereas the children from the other side of the tracks did, perhaps went on to become doctors, lawyers, and things like that. And the difference wasn't academic. The difference wasn't what people expected of us because of our backgrounds and what they thought was achievable for us.
So what you're saying is because of where you actually grew up, the part of town that you grew up, that was the expectation that that is what you could become.
Yeah, the expectation was that, well, I was 17, 18, I was still in school, I wasn't in jail, I wasn't pregnant, I was already a success. So if just go off, be a nurse or a teacher, and that's it.
I love that that meant that you you had succeeded, just those two factors.
Oh,
You weren't in jail
seriously?
and you weren't pregnant. Excellent. So, what would you say was the money mindset that you actually grew up with? And do you think that's had has influenced your career since then?
Well, yes, because the thing about nursing is there's very few it's hard to think of a job that you can't exactly walk out of nursing and make the same money doing anything else, because you're not really qualified to do anything except be a nurse. So instead of sitting with that and possibly when I was younger exploring what I actually wanted to do, I tended just to look for another nursing job and hope that that would fix things.
Well, on that topic then, what do you think you might have wanted to do if you had your time over again?
Well, I may have wanted to do something, possibly something maybe in allied health where the money was better, maybe, psychology, occupational therapy, things that quite honestly I had never heard of at 17, 18. And at my high school, nobody would have been suggesting them to me because, well, I wanted to be a nurse, so that was fine.
So once you basically made your bed, you're lying in it.
Well, that's it, yeah.
Is that something that you'd still think about these days?
Well, to be honest, no, because I am running my own business, and I'm very happy doing the hands-on care, because it's very, very rewarding. I feel I feel less like just a number.
And that's what you have felt like as a nurse, like in those particular nursing jobs?
In many nursing jobs, I have felt that I am just a number. They needed someone with specific skills, but they didn't particularly need me. It could have been me, or possibly, five, in my current job, it could be me, or it could be five of my friends with similar skills that could do the same job.
Hmm, that is interesting. But that brings us to the topic of you are a small business owner now.
Yes.
And so what made you like what initially made you want to go into a small business?
Well, during COVID, um, after COVID, things were never the same again in the hospital. And I decided that it was time to look for something else that I could do happily for the next 20 years, because quite frankly, I don't have 20 years as an anesthetic nurse in me.
So when you say that things changed like during COVID in the nursing, so what did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, things like during COVID, we were doing really long shifts we were because there was a nursing shortage. So we were doing really long shifts. You would go to work and never be quite sure when you were going to finish.
Yeah, I did hear about some people being told that they couldn't actually go home.
Yeah, it
So
was
because there wasn't anybody else around.
there wasn't any, yeah, exactly.
And I'm guessing that maybe we shouldn't bring it up, but maybe we should. I'm guessing that didn't equate to an appreciation payout.
Well, there are two things. Some hospitals, I'll just say that some hospitals, because of issues around COVID, the nurses were on an overtime ban, so they were given the money as till time in lieu, which was very handy when we eventually all got COVID and various bouts of flu. But we weren't necessarily given the choice to take it as overtime had we wanted to. And then there is the money that the government gave to nurses, but only nurses in public hospitals, despite the fact that some private hospitals, once we were back up and running again, spent a lot of time clearing the public lists. Look, I am not saying that I should have got the same money as someone who worked in a COVID ICU. That's not what I'm saying. But I think there were people there were people who worked just on standard wards, no COVID patients, who got 3 grand. I think I think the government could have given the nurses who were working very hard to clear their waiting lists at least some money.
Yeah, it's quite crazy. I mean, that whole COVID time was just something else we've never really experienced before, have we? So
I know, and it kind of changed everything.
yeah, and I
But
think that also in terms of the financial aspect as well, I mean, I think that even more fear was born during that time as well, with people not being able to go to work. It may have been the only time where I know you didn't get time off, but for some people who businesses couldn't run or they were told they simply couldn't go to work, it probably was the only time you wished you actually could go to work.
well, I know there were some private hospitals were basically closed overnight.
Yeah, yeah, it was very, very crazy. And I think I feel like people are still, working their way through that process as well.
Yeah, there's still a lot to be worked through, and then there's all the, do we work from home or do we return to the office? And some of us are kind of saying, we've never, not everyone started out working in an office. Can we open the discussion up to everyone else, please?
Yeah, exactly. So, because things had changed with the nursing industry, that's what kind of prompted you to, I believe, like you took over a business, so you didn't start from scratch. But that's what wanted you to have. Did you feel like you would have a little bit more control if you had
Well,
your own business?
yes, well, I was looking around and I wanted to get out and work in disability, because when I look back, I had lots of experience working with disabled people, you know, both just like my friend's brother was disabled and whatever, and also I frequently got the patients with who needed a little bit of extra TLC. Like even now, if there's a patient that needs extra hand holding, that may be a time where they put them in my list.
And they would be lucky to be there. We've had a few discussions about that, and definitely I think would feel a little bit safer with you than with some other
Yeah,
people.
well, I'm not going to make them take their hearing aids or take their HRT patch off before they come to theatre, which some of the nurses suggest they might like to do, and I'm like, no, stop, no.
I know it's interesting, the hearing aid one. How are you supposed to hear what the person's telling you?
I know, I told my mum before her last surgery, "Don't even think about it, take them with you."
Yeah, it kind of does help, doesn't it?
Well, exactly, people are gonna be trying to wake you up.
Yeah, that's another problem too, right? You can't hear anything. So tell me, did you have any particular beliefs around being in business or the financial aspects of it?
Oh my goodness, when I started looking at it, I had so many beliefs and a lot of them weren't true.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I thought that I didn't see any people running businesses when I was growing up, despite the fact that my dad ran a business for years that we were all involved in.
So you'd actually thought that you'd never been around people who ran a business, even though your father did that.
Yeah, even although I worked in the family business since I was old enough to pick up the phone.
I wonder what made you think that. Have you had any further thoughts on that?
I think it could have been because my dad was a tradie, so it was kind of a tradie type business he ran.
So you didn't think of it as being a business.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Interesting. So did you have any thoughts around the financial aspects of being in business?
Well, I initially thought that I didn't know people who were running a business and doing well, but then I remembered my auntie and uncle who were doing very well because my uncle had taken a really interesting redundancy package from the airport where he'd been working previously. And instead of taking the money, and I think it was a lot of money, he had taken it as it ended up being about 16 years of holiday of flights for him, his wife, and his child. They had
Wow.
yeah, it was fantastic stuff. They were going to they were going to Disneyland every year because
Wow. That they must have
because
seemed like they were doing well.
they did because at that time the pound was really strong, so they didn't and the most expensive bit was the flights, which, well, were already covered for them.
Wow. It's funny that you say that. I guess I used to think that as well. And yet both my dad's grandparents actually ran their own businesses. So it's funny when I think that one used to run a really big uh, lumber yard up on the Central Coast. So yeah, it's kind of, and then all back through that family, they were all business owners, but only recently that kind of triggered in my mind as well that, maybe I come from a family of people who run businesses.
Oh, yes, and then, of course, my dad's best friend, um, he basically sold goods to farmers, but his business was very successful, but his wife said he was like a typical farmer because they never say business is going well, even when it really is.
Hmm. Maybe it's some taboo
Yeah,
something
maybe
or
maybe it's some taboo that if you say business is going well, someone will put the evil eye on your cows and, there you go. It wouldn't
something superstitious.
it seriously would not surprise me if it was something like that.
Or maybe people would be jealous of you. I mean, there's always that thought that, if
That's
you
it.
said you were doing well, that,
Well,
somebody
that's it.
might want to come after you or something.
You don't want people to think that you're getting, above yourself.
Yeah, well, and that's a whole nother thing. There's that, have you ever heard of the tall poppy syndrome?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we will talk about that at another time as well. It's actually quite fascinating, and when I kind of looked into it a bit more, I could see why it's called that. But who knows? That actually happens in nature. So it's a really strange thing, strange phenomena. So I personally have witnessed you do a multitude of things that is most definitely recommended that small business owners do. So that is you're really good at regularly posting on social media. You definitely put the effort in making videos. And when we say that, I think one of the things that's really hard for a lot of people is putting yourself in front of the camera and just doing it because you want to be perfect, etc. And so it's not really about that, it's about doing it, which you've done brilliantly. Networking, you've done amazingly there, collaborating and doing some presentations. And through all of this activity, because you were doing a lot of stuff while still doing your job as well, right? Have you noticed or uncovered any beliefs that you think have held you back in business?
Well, yes, I realized that, yes, I was doing all that stuff and I looked as though I was doing really well, but there was some really basic stuff that I hadn't done. Like, I would make videos, but I would rarely say at the end of them, "This is what I do, call me." And also, there are other ways to get clients that I hadn't even looked into.
Right.
And I realized that it had to be a mindset thing because it wasn't, if you just post 3 times a week, you'll get clients. There had to be something
Mm.
underlying. So I decided I needed to take, a big look at myself.
And are you comfortable in sharing any of those insights with us?
Oh, I am because now, Amira, you said to me very gently when we were on our way to a beautiful activity that maybe I should start thinking about what I actually thought about money. And I realized it was an absolute minefield and that I had been telling myself stuff that was blatantly untrue. And like with my personality, how could I have thought it's not that I would have accepted that the kind of behavior that I was acting like I had just let things happen to me when I don't, I make things I don't sort of, I'm not a victim.
But yet
So
you kind of discovered that maybe you did have some of that in there?
I kind of discovered that I was doing a lot of oh poor me, and I started off with well, I went into nursing because I couldn't afford to do anything else. Now that is blatantly untrue. My brother and my sister both went to university, and if I had wanted to go to university, my parents would have found the money somewhere. As would I. Like my sister worked multiple jobs, few of them very glamorous. She worked she worked in a shoe shop with a raging hangover that had a very out of tune bagpiper playing outside to work her way through her uni. So I would have, we would have found a way to make it work. But I turned this into this narrative. Oh, poor me. My brother and sister went to university and I had to work, I had to work as a nurse, despite the fact that I chose to work as a nurse. Like, I decided at 15, 16, that was what I was going to do. Multiple people tried to suggest that maybe I'd want to do something else. I didn't I didn't listen to them, and I was very determined, A, to go off and do nursing, and then B, to go traveling once I had done it. So
Right.
there was a
So how long do you think that has been rattling around in your
well,
mind for?
it's been rattling around for 30 years because
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So tell me, once you had uncovered that, how did you feel once you had gone, oh, there you are?
I suddenly realized that that was totally ridiculous. And the other thing that I was seeing was that, oh, poor me, I didn't get piano lessons. Now, anyone that knows me knows I am the least musical person they are ever likely to meet. If you're ever near me in church or even near me when I'm feeling particularly cheery, you will hear my terrible singing. There was a reason I didn't get piano lessons. It was nothing to do with money and lots to do with the fact that I can't actually sing or hear music.
But again, I'm sure that if there had been some passion, that there would have been a way found for you to do
Well,
those
the
things.
thing is, I had speech and drama lessons for years, as did my brother and sister, but I went to drama lessons, I sat all the exams, I really enjoyed it.
Mm.
That was something I could do, unlike, I may have been asked to leave 2 dancing schools because of, bad behavior and lack of rhythm.
Oh, oh dear.
I know.
So I noticed that you talked about your brother and sister, and I believe there is a bit of an age gap between you guys, and you're the oldest.
Yes, there's a 6.5 year age gap between, my sister and I, and then another 6.5 between her and my brother, so I was 13 when my little brother was born.
Oh, wow, that is actually quite a big gap.
Yeah, and mom didn't actually think she would get pregnant again.
I know there's 10 years between my children. You can definitely see that, how that plays out. But thankfully, I mean, they get along quite well. So, but do you think, because I mean, I definitely, buy into this idea of where you sit in your family. So, oldest child, middle child, youngest child. There's been lots of studies
Ah,
on
yes,
that your beliefs can be different.
but the research is also that there's such a big age gap between my sister and I that she acts more like an older child as well.
Mm. But I mean, I think that like, for myself, the the age I was, and obviously, I was conscious of things, whereas my little brother and sister were too young to have noticed certain things, therefore they're not carrying around those particular beliefs of what they saw at the time. So do you feel that sometimes because you were the oldest and then your brother and sister were younger, that your opportunities were different and what you saw might have been different and therefore the beliefs different?
Well, yeah, the beliefs would be different because I saw what happened when my dad got made redundant and the very beginning of the business where they were getting a little bit of money from the government to start their own business.
Right.
So
So
I s
your
I
feel of the business would be very different than your brother and sister's.
Yes, like, by the time my brother came along, my dad had had the business for 10 years, whereas I was there for every every year of that.
And did you feel that now that you've kind of uncovered that, do you feel that it had some impact on what you were doing with your business?
Well, I think actually the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was coming at it all in the wrong way because because my grandpa was a miner, and he didn't even Christmas Day wasn't even a public holiday when my mum was a young girl. So I was sort of coming at it from, well, maybe you can't be too successful because, your grandpa was a miner, your grandpa was in the your grandpa led the union, he did this, that, and the next thing. Does how would he feel about you earning megabucks?
Right.
And then I actually realized that that was a massive block, and I sat down and I thought about it, and I realized that, well, my mum was the youngest, so her and my grandpa spent a lot of time together. And when I came along, I my mum still lived round the corner from her mum and dad, so grandpa spent a lot of time with me, and he absolutely adored me. I can't remember much because he died when I was 3, but mum tells me that she would see him, like, telling me stories and trying to cram in as much as he could because he knew he wasn't a well man and he wanted to sort of maximize his time with me. And there's no way my grandpa would want me to hold myself back. Like, he would absolutely love to see me kicking goals and, breaking the generational poverty cycles and winning.
And I think you also mentioned before something about him encouraging you and your mum to go to the library. Was that right?
Yes, my grandpa was now, my grandpa was a miner, and some of the people he worked with could not read. My grandpa was extremely popular when the movies still came with subtitles because he'd have to read them. He'd have to read them for his friends.
So you would say that he definitely was interested or invested in you guys being educated.
Oh, he was extremely interested in education, and he always took my mum to the library and they shared books. In fact, they're really old books which I have read too and thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, when you say it like that, that's definitely not somebody who would be happy about you holding yourself back and not succeeding in life and, living in poverty.
Well, absolutely not, but it took it took me sitting down and going through a lot of surface stuff and realizing that was probably the big one.
And so would you agree that that particular belief, because I've heard you say it was a big one for you,
Yes.
feel that you were um handcuffed by that belief and then
Well,
discovered it to be completely false?
I would say so because the week I discovered it was false, I picked up 3 new jobs.
It actually was quite mind-blowing.
Was
I was pretty gobsmacked.
because I found the client across the road from me. I decide I I was asked to work on the holiday program, and then, as you know, at the weekend, I got the random phone call because they probably thought it was a good bet that I wouldn't be at the grand final. Um, they wanted me to do some people that I had met wanted me to do some nursing for them.
It was absolutely mind-blowing. It's really quite fascinating how uncovering these things can make such a significant shift in things. And what's really strange is that, as you say, you go around with these things and they're not even remotely true.
Well,
Just some crazy story that you've been telling yourself and forgotten about.
yeah, it's a crazy story that I told myself. I didn't think the whole thing through.
Well, we don't at the time, do
At
we?
the time, no, that's the whole thing.
Because as far as I'm aware, what happens is so that as humans we can survive, is that we actually align our beliefs to the people around us, like in our family, our tribe, because that keeps us safe and we're less likely to get tossed out and using our whatever you want to call it, caveman brain, lizard brain, whatever, survival functions. Um, to be on the out doesn't increase your likelihood of survival. So it's better to actually attach yourself and agree with other people in your tribe's opinions and beliefs. So that's usually, I believe, how we come to have these beliefs in the first place. But then we make these decisions when we're so young that we completely forget about them. We go on our merry way and don't even realize that we're wreaking havoc on our lives. So are you comfortable in sharing with us how, like, the process that you went through? Because you said you sat down. I mean, you don't have to go through all of it, but what did you do? Like, I know we had this conversation, but what did you do to then start to notice
After
these
that,
things?
I sat down and started writing what my beliefs in money were, and I started writing them down, and when I wrote them down, I realized that a lot of them were totally ridiculous.
And they came up pretty easily.
They started coming up pretty easily, but the one about my grandfather was slightly it was kind of the underlying belief under everything else, and it came up probably took about a week for that to come up, but it did eventually.
It's interesting how they kind of string themselves together, and
Well,
that
that's
you have
it, and
these thoughts that you probably haven't had in 20 years or something. You're like, whoa, where'd that come from?
yeah.
So would you say that the process was definitely worth it?
Oh my goodness, the process was definitely worth it. As a result of doing the process, I'm working in a holiday program for 2 weeks. I have been out and about. It's been lovely this week. I have a brand new client that we are we're taking it slowly because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and they don't need too much yet, but they want to have someone on hand for the care that they need.
Oh, that is so fantastic. I'm so happy that that's worked out for you.
Oh, me too.
And I think often we're so busy running away from the things that make us feel terrible. We just keep running and running, and what we really need to do is actually pop ourselves down and have a bit more think think and uncover some of these things. So what I want to do, did you have any other thoughts that you'd like anyone to know?
No, I think I've had a lot
I
I think I've
think
had
you
a lot
have.
of
Thank
thoughts
you so
already.
much for your honesty on that, because I know it is a tough topic, and it's definitely there's generally a lot of heaviness around financial topics as well. I mean, not always, but I would say for the majority of people there are, and that's why obviously it's a taboo topic. Um, But so I want to end on a positive note with the last question for you. Is there one money habit or belief that you're actually proud of that you have?
Well, I like to use my money to treat the people round about me like my close friends and whatever, and on so and little Annie has been wanting to go to Luna Park for a long time. Little Annie she's my friend's foster girl, and she says that I'm the family's best friend.
No.
So yeah, I'm like an extra auntie. So she'd been wanting to go for ages. There were no cheap tickets left, so I bought the three of us um deluxe tickets for Sunday, and we just had the best time. It
Oh.
was it was totally money well spent.
And I mean, then you're creating these beautiful memories as well,
And
right?
we rode the Ferris wheel. We've created beautiful memories. She had fairy floss as big as her head. Stu and I didn't, because we ate our lunch and enjoyed it.
Bit of a sugar high there, huh?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm glad I was coming home.
And I mean, I think that's one thing too, like with money that often we get so hung up about it. But and usually this narrative of I just want more, but what does more mean? But it can also be this beautiful thing that help create these beautiful memories, and you guys just having this great time out and enjoying yourselves.
Yeah, it was absolutely magical.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I want to just thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate that you agreed to do this because I know it can be challenging. But as we mentioned, you were a nurse, but you also have your own business, so the Caring Way. So, where could people find you if they need to get in touch?
Well, they can email me on thecaringway2022@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
I
Fabulous.
I specialize in pediatric nursing and support work with children, and most most of my work is in the Ryde area.
Yeah, and you definitely have a Facebook page and a website as well that we
Yeah.
can leave in the description as well. So I just want to thank you so much. And before we go, I just want to let you know that one of the things that myself and a rapid change mindset expert have created was this course called um, Peace with Money. I should know the answer to this, that Peace with Money. And it's just like a series of 10 online videos and worksheets that actually help you go through this process of uncovering some different, money beliefs and just kind of get you on the track of, digging, starting to look. I mean, it's always great to have a conversation as well, but it's definitely a place where you can, get started and understand why your mind's doing what it's doing and, uncover any energy leaks and go on that process. So if you're interested in going on that path as well, then I will put that in the description. And after you've done it, if you're interested in joining me here on this podcast and chatting about what you discovered, I would love to hear from you. So on that note, thank you again, Lindsay. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, I'm just so glad that you've been able to make some progress with that and that your business is on the right track.
Well, so am I. I'm just delighted that things are on the up and up.
I love it. I love it. And I can't wait to see what happens going forwards because there's definitely always, something else as we uncover and unblock ourselves from some big stuff. There's, if we keep paying attention, we can sometimes notice other things and grab a hold of them easier. So, yeah, so I look forward to seeing how it all goes for you. All right, we will talk again next time. Bye for now.